Hey everyone, Derby here, back with another Battle Pirates video, and this is my War Pegasus Fleet Spotlight. I'm going to go over my 4 regular Pegasus and then my War Pegasus, which is currently refitting. I'd like to start off by saying that this is the first video I'm making on this Fleet Spotlight. It may change completely by the end of the raid, and most certainly by next raid there will be some amount of difference with my fleet. So if you are watching this a little bit later, keep an eye out for a second video. I usually do if this is episode 14, I'll do a 14.1 update video on my fleet. So to get things started on my 4 backline holes, I have 2 different builds I'm going for. The first one here, I have 2 Missile Defense System 3, and those are used just to help me countermeasures and shoot things down. You could also go Sprint instead if you wanted to, but I think that this will do better. It's what Kixeye has been telling us through those special offers that they've been putting on and the prizes in the last couple of raids. It's what is probably going to be the best missile defense system against these targets. I have 2 of those on all my ships, and then I have 6 Razor Plume missiles on the back line. I believe the bladed pinion missiles are a bit better. I don't actually have any on my ships, although if you do have them, they're limited and they will perform better in terms of damage and some other stats. So those are my weapons. Those are fairly self-explanatory. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the CIC. On this build, I have 2 builds with Nessus CIC in my base, in my ship, in my fleet, and that adds a bunch, about 13,000 corrosive survival. And to balance that out there, I have 2 ZM1 armors on my fleet, and that gives a total survival for the ship of roughly equal. Penetrative survival is still a bit lower. If I wanted to make it really equal, I could switch out my corrosive sync drive for penetrative sync drive and have a little bit closer of a penetrative to corrosive survival. But I found this better than going 1 CO armor and 1 M armor. It just balances things out a little bit better. The specials are fairly interesting. The sync drive I talked about a little bit, that's an engine. If you don't have this, use a penetrative sync drive or even speed system 6 will work perfectly fine. Note that this has that ship will match the speed of the lowest in the fleet. So for whatever reason, one of your ships, you're just running a blank flagship or something like that, note that it's going to drive the slowest ship speed in the fleet. So just be aware of that if you're doing something weird with a half-finished build or a different flagship. The next one I have here is high-speed missile jets, and that adds a bunch of things here. If you don't have this, you can use high-velocity rounds instead, maybe even siege targeting 4, but the damage isn't quite going to be as good. The next one I have is rapid roller bearings. This is a limited one. If you don't have this, use any other thing that boosts range. I think multi-lens target tracker is an option. Whatever we have on the Nemesis X is also an option. This adds accuracy and range, helps boost some because the hull inherently loses range, so this will help you gain some back. Also has some other great stats. It is a limited one, but I think it's going to be worth it. My next one I'm going to talk about is surgical strike warheads. That most people have that. It is limited to, if you don't have it, use something else that adds penetrative damage. This helps add penetrative damage and reload. It's a pretty good special here to kill things faster. And then I have Penetrative Battery 1. I would not be surprised if Penetrative Battery 2 ended up coming out in a month, 2 months or so as an escalation special. But this generally just adds turret defense and also adds some damage. If you don't have this, you could always use Assault Battery instead. The last special I haven't talked about one is one that a couple players are doing different things, but I'm going for Prometheus Missile System to increase missile critical chance and missile critical damage. That just helps add more damage, as well as boosting anti-missile range and accuracy, which is going to help out my Missile Defense System 3s. Other players are going for Hyper 30 instead, and that may be better, but we'll have to see how it ends up working out. If you are going for Hyper 30 instead on there, you might want to consider not going Missile Defense System 3 and having a slightly different build for your flag. So I'm going to move on to my other build in my backline, my flag, talk about upgrades and a couple other things, so just keep watching here. My second build is very, very similar to my first one, except I am using 2 of the Turin CICs on 2 ships and 2 Nessus on 2 ships. This is a Turin CIC one, and that adds penetrative survival, so I have corrosive armors on here, and all the specials and weapons are exactly the same. If you go to my defense, my survival, you see that they're more equal than each other. The corrosive survival could be a little bit higher, as well as the penetrative survival, but we'll have to see how this balances out. Now I will talk about survival because from what I remember seeing in the VXP targets that we hit, all the ships did corrosive damage and all the missiles did penetrative damage. So if it turns out that you can avoid all damage from these ships, then you might want to end up going mostly penetrative. If it turns out the thing you take damage from is only turrets, you could end up trying to go only corrosive survival. We'll have to see. If you remember back a year or two ago, there was some damage that was completely avoidable, and you could take, for example, only penetrative if you do it perfectly, but you'd end up taking some corrosive if you messed up. I remember doing that with my Nemesis X. So my last build here is my War Pegasus, which is currently refitting, so I'll have to see what's up with that. This is a very similar build special-wise to everything else. All the specials are the same, and as far as armor goes, I have 2 Z1Ms and 2 DC01s, just 2 of each instead, so that my defense is roughly balanced out. Corrosive is a tiny bit higher because I do have corrosive sync drive than penetrative. Again, these armors might need to change around a little bit if I end up finding something else. I know some players are building this as a flag tank and putting countermeasures on either four weapon slots for most of them, trying to making this a more countermeasure heavy build, just to have this as a tank because the current targeting mechanics end up targeting your tank more. And if you're doing that, you probably want to emphasize critical stuff instead of having things like surgical strike warhead. You want to put something else there instead. Maybe that's where you put a Hyper 30 on everything and knock Missile Defense System 3 off all your other things. That might be an option, but this is what I'm going to go for. They're all built pretty much the same. It's all fairly simple. Just make sure you're using the right armors. Now, let me talk about upgrades. So, we have had upgrades offered in Pillage and TLCs, I believe, in last raid. There's going to be upgrade kits and tokens again next raid. Upgrades, I believe, are optional, and I've been seeing a lot of players saying, oh, show us the path to do it without an upgraded ship. Show us how to do it. Yeah, sure you can do it. You have one ship at U3. Try and do it with nothing at U3. So what I'm going to do is I have not gotten any of the upgrade kits or tokens, and for this first raid definitely, I'm going to leave my entire fleet, which I'll go back to here, at U0. I'm going to do the entire raid here with a fleet at U0. There are other people who will go out and they will coin the fleet to U3 as soon as they possibly get it, but I'm going to do my entire first raid, probably my second raid too, with my fleet at U0, just to prove that it can be done. And if I end up being wrong, then I'll end up being wrong, and I'll show you that I am. But I'm still going to go ahead and do that. Now, if you are going to upgrade things, I believe that the flagship is the thing that you want to upgrade because it is going to give you the best stats, and we're going to get a little, it's either going to be called an X1 or U4 upgrade, and that's going to be something that will be offered on at least, I believe, the Pegasus, or the War Pegasus, excuse me. It will only be on the flagship, and will unlock a new experimental CIC slot, and that might even be rolled out in this raid because we are going to be getting 3 new CICs this raid. But you can see if you upgrade it all the way to U3 for the flagship, you're adding essentially 1 armor of each on here that you didn't have, as well as another half for U2 and some evade bonus, as well as increase in damage. So upgrades do help, but I'm going to see and try it out the first raid without any upgrades. Now let me talk about crews before I go here. Crews that will be good with this fleet are things like, let me go through what I have here. Steelheads will be useful to add some defense. Wolfpack crew is going to be useful to add more damage. Things like I have 1 Bullseye Brigade left over that might be helpful to have all my antis work well and all my missiles hit every time. I also have a couple Steelheads, Steel Serpents, and those are going to help add evade. That's going to be helpful on the first ship if there's any accuracy-based weapons. Evade's going to be helpful. I still have a bunch of demo squads and siren crews, and I actually rolled a GM crew today, so I might end up having to use some of that stuff later on. These siren crews from an event should be useful to help reduce enemy reload speed if they get close to you. They have a little aura. I do have all my ships here fully ranked, and I do think that that is necessary. At least 45% rank. If you haven't got them in VXP weekend, load on some VXP crews and go hit things with that. If you have any questions on my Pegasus build or your Pegasus build, make sure you comment below. And if you think this video helped you, leave a like. And like I said, if you're watching this a week or a month or so after I've uploaded this video, you might want to consider checking my channel or searching around, seeing if I have a more updated build out, because my build might end up changing. So I'm going to roll to an end screen now. If you have any questions, like I said, comment below. There's going to be 3 things that pop up. One of those is a recommended video for you based on the YouTube algorithm. One of them is a recommended video based on on my most recent upload, and one is the subscribe button. You can go ahead and click that little cow circle, and that will have you subscribe to my channel. I'm going to roll to that. Thank you for watching, and as always, this has been Derpy, signing out, helping you be a better pirate.